Hey YouTube, it's the Link Dragon Order's Chief here, bringing you guys a Raging Spirits deck profile. I mainly wanted to do this one as well as the previous Link Dragon Order one, despite the fact that they're both getting support very soon. It's more just a before and after, just see what kind of changes will be made to the deck after the new support ends up coming in. So without further ado, let's get started. Of course, the flag is Ancient World, and the buddy monster will be Dragon Kid Ricky. Alright, starting off, we have 4 copies of Dragon Kid Ricky. This is a pretty good card for Raging Spirits. It's a size 0, and most Raging Spirit cards are size 3, so this will at least give you an extra attacker on board. Plus, his ability to cut lifelink for size 3 Raging Spirits is just really good, because every single Raging Spirit basically has lifelink, and the size 3s tend to have some bigger lifelinks, though not as big as cards like Seeger, but still decent lifelinks that can really hurt you. So just having Ricky on the field can give you a bit more survivability for the most part. He does have lifelink 1 as well, but in the end, it's better to lose just 1 life than it is to lose like 2 or 3. Speaking of which, we have Chaos Billy Knuckle, which is your main size 3 for the deck. It's a really good card. Call cost is to pay 2 gauge and put a copy of your deck into the soul. It has the standard Raging Spirit ability to redirect attacks to it. And has a counter effect. Once per turn, you can pay a life, and for the rest of this turn, it cannot be destroyed. So yeah, that's pretty solid, especially since he's supposed to be the tank of the deck. He has double attack, soul guard, and counter attack, as well as lifelink 3, but you can basically circumvent the lifelink using Ricky. Really good card. You really want to get this on the field. It has good survivability, decent defense, good power, a great lineup of red text. Just really nice card. Moving on, we have 4 copies of Full Blast Omni Lord Burn Nova. This is another really good card. This one's more of a power play type card for the most part. It's got 9,000 power, 8,000 defense, 2 crit. It has the Omni Lord ability, so you can play at least one of these in other worlds. Put top card your deck into the soul and pay 3 gauge. Okay. It's got the standard ability for the Raging Spirits to redirect attacks as well. And this one has triple attack, so meaning it can hurt a lot more than your other size 3 monsters. If you just need like a good rush. Just need to deal that final damage, and your opponent doesn't have that many cards in hand, you can bypass their defenses by having more attacks. Also Soul Guard and Lifelink 3, he has the biggest lifelink in the deck. Another card to go well with Dragon Kid Ricky. Moving on, you run 2 copies of Chaos Champion Lord. Just another Chaos monster. Top card in Soul, 2 gauge for call cost. Redirect ability, and he has a different type of counter as compared to Billion Knuckle. For Champion Lord, you can pay a life, and for this turn he gets an extra crit and penetrate. So he's more of bigger battling power, whereas Billion Knuckle is more of bigger defensive ability. He also has double attack and soul guard, as well as lifelink 3. So yeah, that also really hurts. So again, Ricky, good card. Moving on, I run 3 copies of Enma Alliance Jet Cowl. This is more of a unconventional card for the most part. Mainly because this one isn't meant for attacking, but more of just building up the soul of your monsters to keep them around longer. You know, to be able to avoid the lifelink and all that. Okay, first off, it has a hand effect, where if you have a size 3 Raging Spirit on the field, you may pay a gauge, and if you do, put this card from your hand into its soul. Okay, really good way to be able to give you some extra buff for your beefy guys who can protect you. In addition, when the Raging Spirit with this card and soul attacks, for this turn, that Raging Spirit gets 3,000 power, and you can put a soul from a card in your opponent's field into the drop zone. Another way to really just beat down your opponent's walls as well as deal with other like simpler cards like mission cards as well. Because it doesn't say monsters, yeah, it just says them are cards, so you can even just deal with stuff like mission cards as well. Your opponent's playing something like Dungeon World, or Legend World too as well. So for Legend World, you don't really want to drop their soul as much. Alright, moving on for the remaining monsters. I run 2 Ice Dragon Emperor Glacies. Decent extra defense option. You can drop this card from your hand if you have size 3 and pay a life to nullify an attack. Just a little extra defense compared to the extra spell lineup. And I also run 3 Fortune Dragon for Bolka. You can discard this card from your hand if you have a size 3 on the field to gain 2 gauge. The monster lineup does tend to have quite a bit of a gauge cost to be able to use. So it does help to have some extra cards in your deck that can be able to just build your gauge back up after you summon them. Moving on to spells. First things first, I run 4 copies of A Dragon's Will. I activate this card when your opponent attacks if you're size 3. Nullify the attack and put the top card of your deck into your gauge. Good extra gauge build. Nice solid defense card. Next up, I run 4 copies of Gathering of the Armed Dragons. This is a pretty standard card for the most part. Choose a Raging Spirit on your field and give 3,000 power, defense, and counterattack. Considering that Raging Spirits do tend to have just decent defense in the first place, this does add an extra buff. Plus it gives counterattack to the ones that don't have it. So you give an extra, an extra buff to Burn Nova and Champion Lord, just to be able to try to keep them on the field a bit longer. Plus the 3,000 power can actually help for beating over some bigger monsters like a Thora. Next, I run 4 copies of an Encounter with the Dragon. Alright, pay 1 gauge and discard a card. You can search your deck for a size 3 Raging Spirit, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck, and only activate this once per turn. A good way to get to your big key cards you want faster. If I had to make one suggestion, it would be to take out at least one of these for a Divine Dragon creation. But other than that, it's pretty simple, pretty standard. Pretty good, in my opinion. Next up, we run 3 copies of Dragon Emperor Legend. Pretty stable card for the most part. Put the top card of your deck into your gauge, gain a life, and draw a card. Just really good. Really rounds out every Ancient World deck for the most part, if you need extra draw power or gauge power. I also run 3 copies of Chain Select. Drop the top 2 cards of your deck and choose one of the following abilities. Either put a card into your gauge and gain 3 life, or destroy a spell or item on your opponent's field. It's a little extra tech, you give you a little extra life to deal with some lifelink, a little bit of gauge build, or could even just destroy a few problematic cards on your opponent's field if you just want to, just really ruin their day. I also run 2 Divine Dragon creations. I didn't say you can remove one of the 1 spell to add a 3rd one in. Again, really good card for Ancient World. Pay 2 life, draw 2 cards. Fairly simple. And lastly, for the spell lineup, we have 2 Rise and Fall of Dragons. Simple enough. Pay 2 life. Put the top 4 cards of your deck into your gauge. Only activate once per turn. Just really good. Just get that extra gauge build up early on before you summon like your big boys. Alright, moving on to items. I run 4 copies of Childhood Carapace, A Man's Tears. 1 gauge to equipped. When this card in your opponent's field attacks, if you have a size 3 Raging Spirit, you draw a card. Really good for getting that extra defensive buff, although it is only once per turn. But in the end, just an extra card really helps out. It's also got decent power and a nice crit. And the last item is 2 copies of Disposition of the Chief. This one also costs 1 gauge to equipped. And when it attacks, if you have a size 3 Raging Spirit on the field, you put the top card of your deck into your gauge as well. I do prefer equipping A Man's Tears over Disposition of the Chief, but it definitely helps to get that extra item since you will have your center open, so it gives you some extra options. And finally, I run 2 copies of Unmatched in All Seas, Birth of a Chief for impact cards. This was a card I saw some other people using for Raging Spirits. You pay 1 gauge, choose a size 3 monster in your field, and put a card from your drop zone and this card into that card's soul. So again, it's another way to be able to keep your guys on the field longer, since all Raging Spirits in this deck have Soul Guard, the size 3s anyway. And if this card in the soul of a size 3 monster, ability of that card and this card cannot be nullified. So you're basically keeping your guys even more protected, and you really want to protect your monsters. Just keep them around for as long as possible to be able to deal as much damage and deal with as many things your opponent throws at you. Alright, anyways, that is the deck profile for the Raging Spirits deck. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and stay tuned for next time. See you guys later.